I want to become an alien.
I do not like losing. I'll do whatever it takes to win.
I want to be first all the time.
The only thing missing is some actual skill.
I'm not good by nature.
What are you doing? Why is everybody hitting me? What are you doing?
Because it's not the gear, it's the gear in between my ears.
I do a lot of my driving through my bum.
Yeah, I still feel like I'm training. Check this button.
I want to become an alien.
Welcome back to Project Alien. I'm your host, Joe Peak. And now that we have chosen our Alien 8, it's time to get into the meat of this project. And that is training and coaching our drivers. There's a lot to unpack here. Whether it's unlearning their bad habits or trying to unlock the secrets of speed, they're going to have to focus and really absorb everything that they're told and taught. Let's check in and see how they're doing.
These are my first laps that I've seen Adam out on track, so I'm just looking to see, where he's at, where his baseline level is, both on driving, a little bit on setup, and then from there we'll assess, gear selection, braking, downshifting. It can really be a combo of things. But so far so good. I'm liking what I'm seeing. Once he completes these laps, basically what I'm going to be bringing up to him is track limits usage, because in some of these corners, like here, he's not going out far enough. He's leaving about a car length that he could be using to his outside before he would accrue a 1X, and that's just straight time. That's tire wear because you're turning the wheel more than you need to. It's less throttle because you're having to wait on it longer to not risk losing the back end. I do like how he's hooking these those tight left-handers in the final sector and the middle sector there. I like how he's taking those. That's really going to help the fronts stay gripped up. He definitely appears to be very smooth, so that definitely is, I should say with his wheel input. His throttle is close. I like, it's definitely not far off. But specifically his wheel inputs and everything, he's definitely, I don't think he's going to have any problems making it through to the end of races, judging by what I've seen. He seems like the guy who would make it to the end and always keep the car in one piece. To finish first, you must first finish. And that's true no matter what level you're at. This is a fun track to drive. I kind of just want to confirm, in your races that you do, I'm guessing you're normally pretty good about finishing them and getting to the end.
Yeah, last season ended kind of rough. Just there was like 3 races in a row for whatever reason. My brain wasn't engaged, and I ended up throwing myself off the track a couple of times. But yeah, for the most part, unless there's something really off the wall, I tend to finish the races. Okay, yeah, I can tell just from your driving, you give off that, I guess, vibe is what I would say. The largest problem I could see is I don't feel like you're using the track limits to their maximum. I feel like that's where you're missing out the most. For the most part, it's like 3 or 4 corners. It's the exit of the final corner. You're about a car length there's about an extra car length that you could use on the outside before you get a 1X. That would allow you to get to the throttle much quicker and carry more speed down the front stretch. I would say let's pull up your lap 1 and we'll just break it down corner by corner. Alright, so looking at turn 1 here, I don't have a lot to say. Going through the apex and everything, this is one corner I will say, just from the few bit of practice laps I did. There's kind of 2 ways to take it, because if you do miss your braking point and don't clip that apex super close and super tight on the curb, you can still recover any lost time on entry on exit if you have to run higher up the track, just like they do in real life, because that run you can carry off will
hold that momentum down into the next corner. Now going into our next section here, this downhill left-hander, this is kind of a tricky bit. There is an argument to run like a car length higher, almost to a point where you'd be considered the middle. Similar again to what you might see some of the real life F1 guys do. And the reason I bring that up is because the exit, if you get that right and you build up good momentum, it's basically flat out for like 10 seconds. So that might be a place where you could find some extra pace. But for the most part, I didn't see any big problems there. Just know that like I see that corner as like an entire setup period for that right hand kink going up into the uphill left-hander.
Okay.
All good so far?
Yeah. Now I was going back to turn one. The one thing that kind of makes that one difficult to hit right is right now there's no real good brake markers.
I was gonna say, like, I see there's a 50 board, but there's no 100, 150. So that definitely throws a different wrench into it. But that's why I kind of brought up about how if you do see that you miss your braking point a little bit, you can still make something out of it. You just have to target a different line through the apex. So after turn 2 here, looking at the right hand kink, there's not much to cover here. It's corners like these that it really helps to turn in as early as possible. Now I can't say that I found anything wrong with how you were taking it, but I like to bring this up because you know, these two corners, turn 2 and I guess the right hand kink would be considered turn 3. You put those together right, I feel like that's where a large amount of time could be sitting for you. And the straighter you can take that right hand kink, the better your tires will be. Decrease the chance of having like a snap spin type of scenario because of the high load nature of the corner.
Yeah, and there's also a bump that's right there as well that, like, if you don't hit it right, it'll throw the car out.
When I was doing some laps, when I started to take a little bit straighter and kind of set myself up more, changing my line in the corner before that left-hander, it allowed me to take that little weird bump a little bit straighter, and the car was more secure in that area. That's why I'm kind of bringing that up. But I'm glad you noticed that, because that's a big reason why I did it, because I literally spun out because of how my car was angled. So going up to this uphill left-hand kink, I guess, it doesn't appear like you can really take much of that gray area on the curb unless you're in like a GT car. So we're good there. It kind of looked very vaguely like you might have been waiting to turn in a little bit too late, and that could cause problems, you know, through the center and staying on track on exit there. Would that be something you agree with, or you feel like you're pretty good there?
No, I agree. I think some of it is because, like, if you cut it too far to the left and you hit that gray portion, I can't remember, it's either an off track or it's like a slowdown. But that the other thing I ran into, especially early on, was like I would track out to this red and green and white curb. That one's a lot rougher than the other curbs, and it'll completely bounce you out. And then you get both an off track and you get the little slowdown penalty. Right.
Okay, so my perspective on this part is I'm basically shooting my left front for, like, I don't know how to describe it, but basically the edge of the red and white curbing, you know, not getting onto the gray, but for your lap 1 that we're looking at here, that looks pretty good. What I would say about the exit curbing, so like obviously that black looks like a drainage system almost, but that green and white section, my understanding is that the edge of it next to the black line, if you will, for this, that's like the highest point of it, and the part closer to the red and white curbing is smoother, I should say. It's not smooth, but if you do it right and you target your right side tires for being like in the middle of the white and green and the red and white, there's like a little seam almost. That's kind of what I target for, and I feel like that's you can push it more than that, but it's not really worth it because of the reasons you described.
Okay.
And I mean, you were on our lap 1 here that we're looking at, you were just about there. So I mean, not really a big deal necessarily, but it can help over a course of a race when it comes to like tire wear and especially on the softs that don't last at all seemingly.
Yeah, somebody had mentioned that they made them last like 20 laps or something like that, but I feel like you got to have like Sergio Perez tire saving skills to do that.
So that's one area that it can be helpful to kind of know how to tweak and play around with some things in the car. Moving on to this uphill right-hander, for the most part, I liked how you took it. I think a lot of guys might take a wide entry there and then try and cut it, but I think you had the right idea by entering a little bit shallower and dropping down, I think it's 3rd gear, and getting back to it because of how the track opens up once you get up the corner and through the apex. I think that's great. The only thing I'll add is that, you know, once, and this might come with more laps naturally, but I think you can probably get another half car length out of the exits, or as far as where you're placing your car on exit. I think you can probably straddle that red and white curbing about right down the middle and have it give you a little bit more room to work with. That should still allow you to have some, like, you know, not be right on the concrete or something. I thought it was gravel at first, but that's one area that I would say you could probably get to the throttle a little bit quicker, maybe a half car length, even a car length potentially, if you use a little bit more of the track limits on exit.
Yeah, this was one corner that just in private testing before this that I felt like was actually one of my weaker corners, and I could, like, watching the little delta time thing on the steering wheel kind of seemed to indicate that, because it would start going plus numbers as I would go through this corner and exit it. So this is one that I've been kind of playing with, trying to find like a different line or a different approach. I've tried kind of maybe clipping the inside curbing here with the right side tires to see if that kind of helps get the car to cut better. So that's one that I've been working on, just different ways to try to, you know, hit it right.
It's a tough one because when I was driving, it was like I can't see the track, you know. I think you have the right idea to, I don't know about actually getting up on that inside curbing. I can't speak to that at all, but I would be of the opinion that you want to cut in and get your downshifting done and then get back to the throttle and let it kind of arc out on its own. It's one of those corners that at first I thought, you know, okay, I'll take a wide entry and come back, but you, like, with how the downforce is set up and everything that these cars have available to them, there's like no need. You can do everything by cutting it shallower and just getting back to the throttle earlier instead. Coming up on the chicane here, it seemed like you could get up on the gray section a little bit more. You could potentially see maybe a 1/10 or 2/10 from that, and then over the course of a run maybe see some improved tire wear due to just being able to turn in earlier. And your exit, you can't really do anything too crazy there because of the orange sausage curb deal. That's kind of a no-no for any of these cars, as you probably figured out. Your exit, I like. You used basically all that was available to you going out all the way to the grass, so that's great.
Yeah, so this is one spot. That's the thing with this track, as I've noticed, that the off tracks are very, very sensitive. Like, even though it's got the new 4 tires off rule in certain places, like, there's a lot of places that it seems like you look at a certain spot wrong and it throws an off track at you, or even like the slowdowns. And the chicane, it seems like that's the case, because I'll get it what feels like maybe just a couple, like another, you know, foot or so to the right, and now that little green bar pops up that says I drove off the track, you know. But yeah, I'll try to cut it a little closer and see where exactly that line is.
One thing you could try doing is maybe try to turn in just a little bit earlier if you can try to cut it a little bit straighter, and it's hard for me to say because because of the views that I have, it might be a little bit different for me what I'm seeing versus what you're feeling out there in the car. So it's kind of splitting hairs a little. Definitely have the right idea through the corner. Try to push the limit there a little bit, just to see if you can't get a little bit more front grip through there, turning in a little bit earlier and just see what happens. Worst case scenario, I would just say go back to what you've been doing because it's not anything wrong with that. You just might be able to find a couple extra tenths, which will add up over the course of a race, of course. But I like your exit and everything, and that's a huge part of that too. We're starting to get to the section where there's the track limits that I want you to focus on. So I would say this first left-hander, I'm pretty happy with how you took this. It's another one of those corners that I found myself turning in much earlier than I expected to be. I think you kind of got the idea for that. I liked getting up on that curb, not the gray section. I don't think you can do that, but I would say about another tire width to the left than what you've been at, and then that also helps the next corner because that means I'm farther to the left when I turn back right. So it's just carrying momentum through those corners just by backing up the first corner in that series of corners.
Yeah, actually looking through it right now, I was kind of thinking the same thing, that I probably could have caught maybe put the left front on that little lip there at the top of the curb.
Yep, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I think that would go a long ways because not only would it give you more time through that corner, it would also allow you to be, it's a tire width there, but it's a half car length or more when you come back to the left, setting up for the next corner. And that's ultimately a big deal because that next corner, you're on throttle more in that section leading up to the next, through that fast kink into the right-hander than you are between the two corners we're looking at right now. And that's ultimately why I would advocate for it the most, is not because of what you get through that apex and off the corner, but what you can do better setting up for the next corner.
And I feel like that's one of the weakest corners for me. This whole section I feel like is my weak point on the track, but this corner is the first one that I'd cringe at, and then I think the next one is the last two corners especially is kind of, I know we're getting to there, but those two also I haven't quite figured out how to get through there correctly yet.
No. And I would say with how this track goes, it's kind of all rhythm based because if you mess up one, it's very hard to stay in the rhythm for the other ones because they all kind of work in tandem. That's okay as long as you're realizing that and you can, the next step is doing something about it. With that being said, looking at these next two corners, I'm starting at the right-hander back. What happened here on lap one is it looks like you slowed down too much, and that's why you turned. You did slow down too much, but I like that you were using all the track available to you on the inside, getting up onto that, basically right next to the grass. These curbs, they have next to the grass, they have a lip to them. For the most part, I'm pretty happy with where you placed your car, but the problem for me comes in to your exit, because this is another section that I think you could be approximately another car length to the left. And that would allow you to carry a significant amount of speed through the corner before that. That would potentially cause you not to run as tight to the apex on that right-hander, but it wouldn't matter because you'd be carrying all that speed through the next corner and into that right-hander. Wouldn't be a super big deal.
Yeah, I was gonna see if, do you think taking a shallower entry would have, I guess, a straighter exit and used up more of the exit curve? Do you think that's a good idea?
I think a lot of times that's a good goal to strive for. It doesn't always work out perfectly. Can you tell me what your were you braking a lot through there? Were you? It doesn't sound like you downshifted at all, because this is a corner where I could see, because it looks like you overslowed, and turning in and running a shallower line can help that. It may not be the best approach to break through that habit. So I'm just kind of curious. Just want to check and make sure. Does it show you as braking at all, or is it just, when I was doing laps, it felt like I was just lifting and making sure I had my turn-in point right.
But if you're using brake, I would say your first step is to get comfortable not using brake through there, unless it's like a problem or something.
Yeah, so I was on the brakes at the end of the red curbing before the corner on the right-hand side, and I think I maxed out probably about 25% braking, and then by the time I actually got into the entry of that corner, I was already trailing off of it. And then just before the apex, I was off the brake and then back on the throttle about 30% slowly, and then just kind of increased it as I hit the apex and was exiting.
I would focus more on not braking as much through there. Let the downforce that you're carrying kind of slow you down, the engine braking, if you will, because it's not, by braking more, you're going to put more energy into your tires and everything. So if you can just brake less, that'll kind of take care of the overslowing of the center and should help you kind of work on that exit, pushing it a little bit wider, getting back into the throttle. It won't be, a car length quicker or anything, but if you brake less and don't overslow the car as much, it should kind of naturally carry you to where you need to be on exit.
Okay.
And that can be a tricky thing to work out, but with this track, I don't think there's really anything else like it. So it can take some time to really get the hang of that. And it might, if you're ever worried about 1X's or whatever, my strategy for going against that is in a practice session, I just go and get the 1X. It's if you know where it is, then you can work on building up to it. So I always like to, go a little bit slower if I need to, whatever. Just find out where the track limits are and then kind of work backwards from there until I get to a point where it's not activating. And then that's where I know, okay, that's my limit. And I usually do that for just about every track I go to, unless I already know it. So moving on to our next section here, I would say that this left-hander, this quick left-hand kink, you can get onto that curb. I don't recommend going up on the lip or anything, at the very edge, but you can definitely grab a chunk of it, and it'll help you, instead of being kind of pointed outside at the wall when you need to start turning back in, you can be straighter. It ain't much, but you can be a little bit straighter by taking that corner a little bit sharper and set you up for a better run out of that corner. This is another one. I like how you took the apex. You clipped on the right-hander now. I liked how you, I like the amount of curb you were taking. Exit here is one thing that I you're almost there, For the most part, it's better than some of the other corners that I've seen, but I still think you can probably target. I was targeting about halfway down the middle of the green and white curbing. As long as you didn't go over it or onto the edge of it, it seemed to be okay. Alrighty, so coming down here into this, I don't even know what to call it, probably one of the heavier braking zones. This is another track limits area, and this is probably one of the most severe ones, I would say, because I would say it's you can get your right sides pretty much all the way onto that curbing. So you got about safely a car length to work with on your left side that you could be using, and that will help you carry significantly more speed through the apex. The apex itself, I liked how you took that. I think that's perfect. I would just like to see you carry more speed and use more of the track limits available to you. But in general, solid. You had the right idea through it for sure. The next corner, this left-hander, I would say it looked very good. Again, it's the track limits thing on the exit though. Your entry and your center, I agree with all of that. This isn't one that I would really say run the outside for the momentum because you go into another corner where you're off the throttle again.
So I like how you hooked that. That's exactly how I would be taking it. But you're losing probably a car length to 2 car lengths on the outside that you could use. I was going as wide as like straddling that gray piece in the middle of the green AstroTurf and the red and white curbing, and it wasn't. I'm 99% sure it wasn't dinging me for a 1X, but even if we don't go that far, you're still about a car length too far to the left, where you could be using that track to gain. It could be as much as 2/10. And you'll still be able to get over to the left in time if you were to go farther out to make the final corner as well. Which, talking about the final corner, I like what you do for that. I like how you take your entry. You know, I think there's an argument to be had about, you know, taking it shallower, but because of the nature of the corner and how long it is, I don't have a problem with how you approach it. It will allow you to have pretty good exit speed, and it could help save some front tire wear depending on what the problem is here for you and how that wear develops. The only problem I had was on exit again. About a car length, or a car width I should say, more available to you than what you were using, and that would help you use less wheel input, get to the throttle quicker, and carry more speed down into your next lap. Or, with that all being said, we can back up to anything that I might have covered, or if you had any points you wanted to touch on about any of those last corners, feel free to do so.
Okay, yeah, so on the second to last corner, the left-hander, like early in the week, the very first laps that I was running, I was actually kind of like taking a late entry here, hitting a late apex and kind of driving more straight off. And it seemed to be okay if I hit it right, but then obviously if I missed it, then I just ran wide and was, you know, understeering the whole way. And then, so when I started, for whatever reason, taking a tighter entry, it kind of just happened. I started obviously pushing out more on exit, but I guess the reason I wasn't like letting the car drift out was because I felt like it was not drifting out, you know, because of something I was trying to get it to do, but because it was pushing, because the front tires were slipping in. So it was more of a, you know, crap, I need to get it cut back because I got this next corner coming up. So, I mean, I'll definitely start working on pushing out that exit a little bit more.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like, I guess in my mind, it was more of the car's, you know, starting to get tight here, so I better like slow it down and get it cut back to the right so it doesn't burn the tires off and I can get ready for the right-hander.
Yep. I totally get that. That makes sense. It's a little bit odd how I was doing it. It can be kind of tricky to wrap your head around it when you first start doing it, but basically, like, the difference between the way you were taking it and the way I was taking it is what happens is about the center of the apex, I was probably getting, you know, once we get in the apex, we get our downshifts down and we're back to the throttle. I'm probably sitting about 60 to 70%, but I'm getting to it, what I would say, quicker than you, probably a car length or two, somewhere between a car length and 2 car lengths quicker than you, but I'm not necessarily getting to 100% as quickly as you. But where that makes up is that I'm to the throttle quicker and I'm using a different line because I have more track available to me, so I can keep that average speed up longer than you can because you're taking a tighter line. Some of the push that you're seeing, I feel like it could be set up. I haven't driven exactly what Suelio put out, but it could be. I get a kind of a feeling that it could be too much throttle too quickly, and that can also kind of cause that push. In a car like this, what would happen is you would get a push loose where it would push, and then snap. I don't know if that would describe what you had been feeling if you were doing that earlier or not. But that can be something to look out for and what might cause that kind of push in the nose. But yeah, I would say just play around with it. if it's not working out for you and you're not getting the hang of it, that's okay. Like, the line you're running isn't terrible, and there's a lot of other areas that you could focus on that would yield you significant time as well. But yeah, just play around with it and see what you find out. You know, you might be surprised.
Okay, yeah, I'll work on that.
Is there anything that you do want to talk about or discuss?
Like, one of my biggest things that I've noticed just over the time that I've been racing this car, and it seems like even if I can hit like a really amazing lap in practice, I can never seem to replicate that in a race situation. And that's, if there's something I personally want to work on throughout the process, is try to figure out like why that is and how to get past it.
That's definitely something that throughout our sessions and everything we do, that's not necessarily a written goal, but definitely something I want to help you break through on, and definitely possible.
Okay, yeah, it's because that's kind of the biggest thing that gets me in. Like, Monza last week was even a good example, because I was running so for me, it felt like really good lap times, like I said, at practice. And then I would get into the race, and I don't remember what the leaders were running. I'm going to just throw a number out there, like say they were running 122.8s, and that's what I was hitting in practice. Well, then in the race, they'd be knocking down 122.8s, and I'd be doing like 123 3s or 4s or whatever. And I'd be sitting there like kind of getting, because I could hear crew chief telling me what their times were, and I was getting kind of annoyed, because I'm like, how are they doing that? Like, I'm getting slower and they're getting faster.
I think we covered a solid amount today.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot I can work on. But yeah, I'll definitely take a look at the track limit stuff and try to push those a little harder.
Alrighty, well, good deal.
All right, so just finished my first coaching session with Dallas. Took some laps around Hungaroring in the McLaren F1 car, and overall it was a really good session. He was able to point out a few areas that I needed to improve on to get some better pace, which is the biggest thing that I was looking for.
As you can see, the journey to becoming an alien is not an easy one, but then nobody said it would be. Next week, the drivers will face off against their first challenge. It will be a time attack with a variety of different disciplines involved. The drivers will have to dig deep into their talent. And the pressure is on, because the slowest two will be eliminated. We'll have to tune in to find out who gets returned to Earth. I'm Joe Peak. Make sure and subscribe to the channel and keep reaching for the stars here on Project Alien.